Hello there. How are you doing, everyone? It's me, Elliot Cowan, the resilient artist, and I haven't sat down at this desk for a few weeks, so I thought I would just, since I was here earlier going through some emails and admin that I need to catch up on, I thought, right, Substack, I've been missing you. I haven't been contributing to you. I have been neglectful, and I regret it, and I've missed it. So I thought I'd come back in from a different angle to usual, because ordinarily I'm not really talking to anything live. I prepare my podcasts or my little videos and articles over a number of hours, and I just thought, stuff it, I'm going to just shoot from the hip for perhaps as much my benefit as yours. The reason I've been away for the last few weeks is I've been rehearsing a play, and in many ways it was the antidote and antithesis, or has been the antidote and antithesis to everything I was doing at the beginning of the year on this platform, on YouTube, on Instagram, all these other digital-based platforms in which I'm trying to sort of find an identity, an action, a purpose. And then as I was getting fully ensconced in all of that and finding a sort of pathway and a voice, which I think, is really important, and the only way of really doing this, developing a bit of community, gathering people together of like mind, of common interests around the sort of stuff I talk about, connected to acting, connected to well-being, connected to, I don't know, sort of... obviously auditioning and all that kind of stuff and self-tapes, but hopefully something more broad, actually beneficial to just quiet existence in the world. Along came this offer to do a play with a favoured director of mine, an old friend who I worked with maybe 2 decades ago, and have remained a friend of, and on a great play by a great writer and a lead role. And I thought, well, these are things I haven't really dipped into for a while, so I think I'm going to have to turn my back on my independent effort to become a sort of one-person business, one-person expresser of myself and connector to people, to have that agency and to have that function and purpose in the world. And I'm going to have to go back to brass tacks, go back to where it all started. And perhaps once I'm over the hump of getting this show on stage and in front of an audience, and we sort of get onto the rails of a long run, I'll be able to diversify again and speak more about this. But suffice to say, I've been rehearsing The Price by Arthur Miller, directed by Jonathan Munby, with Henry Goodman and John Hopkins and Faye Castello, all in the cast. There's just 4 of us. It's one of Miller's latter-known play, or lesser-known plays, and latter-dating plays to his big 4. It was written in 1968, or released in 1968, and it isn't the Crucible, All My Sons, Death of a Salesman, View from a Bridge era, where he was a younger man writing perhaps more, I don't know, he was more powerfully, more effectively in the landscape of American theatre and global theatre. And it's a fitting play for me to look at this time in my life, as it no doubt came from a stage in his life that he wished to write about some of the themes which resonate very much with where I am. But yeah, we started rehearsing 4 or 5 weeks ago. It's been quite a compressed experience, not quite enough time as ever to take your time with the play. I mean, I don't know how often that really gets realized these days. I think generally we have to get on with it and make sure that we've done lots of prep work and can work effectively and expediently. But it's been a real, wonderful challenge and a task and a sort of real focus, a real sort of endeavor to get to where we are already. And we've still got a week before we sort of open officially, or 10 days before we open officially. But by the end of the week, we'll be performing in front of a paying audience, which obviously makes things slightly more real and vital. Today, we're starting our tech rehearsals. Go back to the theatre, which is the Marylebone Theatre in London, just off Baker Street. It's a relatively new theatre in this form anyway. It's in the building that is the Rudolf Steiner Centre. And if you know of Steiner schools, this is where they sort of have their head office, or one stage did. It's like a sort of foundation. It's a beautiful building, akin to the types of buildings that I trained in as an actor, sort of around Gower Street and Cheney Street. Sort of 1920s Nouveau architecture. It's quite sort of unusual, lovely environment though. And they have a theatre there that was built as part of the whole sort of ethos of the Steiner movement, that has been updated and rebranded as a producing house. And the idea, I think, is for it to have its own identity of developing new work to go into the West End. But there are productions that have been on there that have come from other parts of the world, perhaps, and have, it's like a small off-West End producing house, which is great. And I'm happy to be part of a new endeavour there. Because as I say, Jonathan Munby and I have worked together before. He and I did Henry V back in, I was just turning 30 at the time, so literally 20 years ago. And that was a young man's play for both him and me. We're the same age, similar backgrounds, I guess. And we had a meeting of minds on that play, which was a real moment for me. And for him, I think, we were on our way into bigger shows down into London, but, we were cutting our teeth on brilliant material, and he did a fantastic job. So I remember that time fondly, and we've remained friends over the years since then, bumping into each other or doing sort of the odd workshop together or reading. And then, yes, I suppose the two of us experienced similar fluctuations in our careers as we meet middle age, and various other things occur around us that we have no say or control over, which are either global or more sort of community based. But you keep negotiating with them as an artist. You keep responding, observing, remaining sensitive. You have to often, in some ways, remain more positive and resilient than you thought you might. The basic criteria of being an actor or a director is that you've got to keep on picking yourself up and striving for the next goal, the next opportunity, preparing yourself for whatever challenge you want to be met with, and some you have no idea you're going to be met with. But then there are additional changes adding to that all the time, economic, global, political, medical, so you just keep on having to shift. And Jonathan has been actually teaching or running a building out in Cardiff. He's been running the Welsh College of Speech and Drama, Music and Drama. And I think I will get to speak to him face to face on a podcast about his career and, things he learned doing that role for 5 or so years, which took him out of the general sort of directing circuit, from being a international director working in Japan and Canada and in the commercial sector and the subsidized sector. He was a journeyman director, still is, and now he's rebooting, I suppose. But we could find out more about that on a later day. And he's also got some wonderful experience and has articulated a sort of ethos regards safeguarding and well-being within an acting environment, a creative environment. Having been a principal at a drama school, that's something that he's taken very seriously and implemented at the Welsh College. So I'd like to know more about that when we have a chance. But lately we've just been thinking about Arthur Miller and the price, getting that show on. Like, like I say, we work into the theatre today, so this is a nice watershed moment for me to take stock and to re-engage with the way in which I was perhaps communicating before this came along. And I'm sort of feeling quite good about it all. Although, you know, there's that slight trepidatious feel about how it's all going to sort of bed in. This is the sort of part that I've not done the like of for a while. It's a lead role. I'm on stage solidly for 2 hours, where there's an interval of, 15 minutes, but it's a real-time story. What will be probably about 2 hours, 20 minutes. And I'm basically first on, last off. And I don't really stop talking. It's basically the story of a man who's revisiting his past via an attic full of furniture that he has to sell that belonged to his family, who experienced a Wall Street crash and lost everything. There used to be a wealthy upper middle class or sort of upwardly mobile New York family. Dad was a businessman and lost it all in the crash. And two brothers had a very different experience after that in dealing with it, in keeping the family together, to keeping the father afloat mentally and physically, and finding their own way in the world. And it proves to be very autobiographical because of what happened to the Miller family. The setup is very, very similar. You can see where he's pulled from his own life, perhaps more explicitly than any other play he's written. So there's lots of research to be done there in terms of history and Miller's family history, which is helpful and resonant, but not necessarily the only play, the stopping point. Obviously, the play takes on its own life. But Victor, Franz, the character I'm playing, is the one that's sort of leading the story into the what to do now with this family, what to do now with this family furniture. And it brings together the brothers, and it all gets kicked off by the catalyst of the furniture dealer who comes along and is there to value the furniture, to get the price, and to work out who gets what. Well, he's not there to work out what, but to work out what it's all worth, so Victor can decide what to do with it. But he gets more than he's bargained for. He gets a quote that that's less than he bargained for, but there's more available in terms of a wealth of knowledge or experience from this man that he has to take on. The transaction entails. So that's the basic setup, and it's very contained and very old-fashioned in a way. It's 4 characters in a room talking in real time. But somehow just the words take them all to a point of crisis and climax and dramatic intensity, which you expect from Miller in any of his plays. And the themes are present. It's not far from themes in Death of a Salesman, or in View from a Bridge, or from what's it called, the most recent one, that's the old Vic, the young Vic. I mean, they're typical American dream questions that seem to have a relevance still as we watch America perform its form of capitalism that is, it's manosphere hyped capitalism, and with the threat of potential collapse around the corner. But I've related to it most potently because I'm a middle-aged man. I'm exactly the same age as this character, who is preoccupied with turning 50, as I will also be this year. And where that puts him in his life arc and what to do now, because he's at a point in his career where he could retire. He's actually a police officer, and he's done his 25 years and some. So he could, as his wife wants him to do, give up the beat and go and do something more interesting, edifying, perhaps more lucrative. And he sort of feels that he's on that precipice. and he feels the pressure and the expectation, but he can't necessarily change. His identity is very locked into who he is, to what he's been doing these 28 years. And moreover, that's locked into the reason why he became a cop in the first place, where his brother became a surgeon and did terribly well and is very wealthy and very powerful in his community. So they have different views of what it's like to be an American man during the sort of post-war years, the post Wall Street crash years, the center of the 20th century, which in many ways has created the life that is now being constructed and reappraised now by technological advances that very much see the end of the industrial era, which this play is set at the sort of in the tail end of, in the sort of apogee of. So yeah, there's a lot. As soon as I read it, I was like, oh God, yeah, this guy, I know where he's at. And I think there's a lot of resonance, which is important to me when I'm working on a project. I want to, particularly theatre, I've noticed that over the years, over the decades of being an actor, and starting with a love for theatre and studying theatre and reading it and watching it and being in it, which was my, that was the crucible of my creation as an actor. I noticed that plays are almost like they're sounding boards for me. But my choice of when to do them and with whom to do them and what plays to do when they come across my desk is very much based on where I am in my own life. It's a wonderful privilege to have a medium that I'm skilled enough to be part of, that actually become so personal, not just in terms of like, oh yeah, I know where this character's at, but often in the terms of like a landscape globally, how it fits in, what it's saying about us as a society, and where we are globally, politically, economically, how we treat each other, how divides have occurred. It won't necessarily be explicitly about the people or the times and the divisions that we're experiencing at that moment, but it will be speaking about something allegorically relevant to that, or analogous to our life and times. And I think I've always had a tendency to like lock into that as the purpose of theatre. Obviously, certain plays get produced at certain times because they have a resonance to the time. But then as an actor within them, okay, well, this is corresponds to how I see the world working at the moment. And this character is speaking about things that I think about and I feel strongly about, and he has been given better words to express it than I would find myself, because obviously a writer's behind that, and she or he has worked on that and articulated that with care and skill. And I think that is the cup from which I drink to feel artistic, to feel like I have a purpose, to have a voice in the world where otherwise I have no more voice than anyone else. And it just puts me in a place where I'm engaging with things which are important to me. And also I have a chance to engage with my common man, my fellow man, on a more broad level. I can walk into a room and 1,000 people are there and we're all thinking and watching and hearing the same stuff. And that makes me feel better about being alive. And it certainly, I think, underlies why I started acting in the first place. And I think, I ask myself a lot at the moment why I'm an actor. Why is it that I chose this as my profession, my vocation 30 years ago? Because I've been working now for 25 years. I trained for 3. I went to university for 3 before then. So that's already 31 years where I was kind of thinking of becoming an actor. And let's say that perhaps 2 or 3 years before that, when I was studying theatre studies A-level or doing plays at school, I was like, I think I might be an actor when I was about 16. So, it's been a long time, 35 years maybe, of thinking of being an actor. Why all that time ago, sometime in the early 90s, did I think acting would be a good way to go? And what does it mean now? Because acting has changed a great deal and also always remains the same. And I have changed a great deal, but have always remained the same also. And what you think acting is when you start out is different to how it is after 30 years. Internally, personally, what it does for me, what I'm finding from it, what it's allowed me to achieve or to acquire or to do. But then also the role of the actor is changing all the time, particularly now. It's about to really change. And I am fascinated with the idea of that being challenged and mutated into something new that I wouldn't have had any idea of when I started out. Most of my career I haven't had any idea of. But it's important now to look at, because I need to refine my position in the landscape as this thing called an actor. It's not just going to mean one thing anymore. Not that it just meant one thing, but it's no longer just going to mean the thing that it always has. And this has happened before to us 120 years ago when cinema came along, or when gaslight appeared in theatres, or they built theatres undercover, or they moved away from verse speaking, or casts completely made up of men and introducing females into the cast, or work that's not been commissioned directly by the king or queen. But there have been technological and political changes to the role of actor and the role of theatre or expression in this way for centuries, ever since we decided to sit around campfires and listen to each other tell stories. And we've had to find new skills, find the light in a different way, find the lens, find the voice, find the reason, find the purpose, find the income. These have all modified over the years. And even in my short career, comparatively, I have seen, technological and economic changes that have completely defined my life, that I didn't give any thought to when I was 16 or 18 or 22, working towards becoming an actor. And now at nearly 50, there's more changes afoot than ever. And how we might get replaced is going to be significant. But when I say replaced, I don't believe we will be fully replaced ever, because I think we'll always be organic, acoustic, analog creators, as well as everything else. Which is why it's important to me to go back to theatre and do a play that is embedded in naturalism, embedded in the spoken word. It's as simple as 4 people being in one room for 2 hours talking and getting to some kind of emotional rebirth, basically. And none better to do that than Arthur Miller. And, I think it could have been done in this same way 2,000 years ago, but different trappings. So that is important to me to recognize and to reharness and to re-engage with. And I'm just about to be imposed upon. So how do I pause this? Hello?
You're recording?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I should get my shoes. Oh, you're recording?
You're live, so hurry up.
I'm like, what?
Yeah. I don't know how to. Oh dear. What's gone wrong? Yeah. So talk about rudimentary skills when it comes to recorded media. Anyway, I've probably been talking enough. I just wanted to try and articulate where I think these things are going, and how I think it's going to become even more important if you have a bedrock, if you have a basis in live theatre and live performing. And there will be actors who don't. There will be thousands, hundreds of thousands of actors who only ever think of themselves as recorded media performers. particularly in this day and age, I think, where, video is so prevalent and streaming is so prevalent. There'll be actors who are coming through drama schools who aren't really interested in being on stage. They're suffering the stage bit just to learn the craft. And, I've worked with actors all the time on screen, huge stars and other kind of colleagues and contemporaries who never go on stage. And that's fine. There's no judgment there, because I think being on screen is a difficult, demanding, and wonderful thing. I just always had the intention of doing both, or doing everything. But it has been grounded for me in live performance and having a classical training, whatever that means, but ostensibly starting my journey from being in plays and taking that more and more seriously as I grew up. And I think I'm at a point in my life, and the industry, for want of a better word, is at a place where it's as well to know that of yourself, that if you know where you are on a stage and with a text and with a live audience, if you know what you're doing there and you can do that, if you're allowed to do that, then you have an identity as an actor, come what may. It may be possible that our identities will be compromised and changed yet further beyond what they already have been, I think, in this last couple of years, by the growth of AI and images and filmmaking and likeness capturing and so on and so forth, that will burgeon and become bona fide art. Because it will, and that is great. There will be no problem with going to see an AI film that's Oscar nominated for its direction and acting and its scenic wonder, costumes and so forth. I think that will become a thing, because it will be an extension of what we are already doing, and there will be craftspeople behind every step of that who have great taste and technical skill and imagination and determination to render what it is they hold in their minds. And what a wonderful thing. But it will mean that certain other types of recorded media that we would have otherwise been involved in will be marginalized and harder to come by. And so will options and possibilities to be paid for that and live a form of middle-class existence that is reliant upon creative art, which is a great shame and a worry. And for somebody who has been lucky enough to work in TV that has been paid well enough for me to buy a home with a mortgage and everything else, but bring up kids in a sort of modest middle class way, but in an expensive city, that is hard now. It's just notably different, and there aren't the auditions and projects and green lights firing off that give the already saturated number of performers that we are a bite of a slice of a pie that is well stocked. That pie is becoming smaller, and the people around the table are becoming more numerous. So it's a trickier one to feel like there is a future for. And if my son, who's currently 13, or my daughter, who's currently 10, start talking about becoming an actor, they will be looking at a very different prospect to even the worries and woes and threats and trials and tribulations that I was beset with when I was, moving into becoming a professional actor. And hundreds of people warned me against it, but you still have the passion and need to perform. And that was largely based on my relationship to live theatre. I didn't know or think really at all about becoming a screen actor until I graduated from RADA, which had a small aspect of screen training, but largely was about voice, about body, about expression, about impulse, about text, and and stagecraft. All of which is translatable, not just to screen acting, but also life and professional existence, professional behavior, leadership, public speaking, teaching, communicating, setting up business, being an entrepreneur. There's so much of a crossover that acting has with other walks of life that it's a wonderful tool. that theatre and the development and craft within that gives you. And I want to share that with people so that they see themselves overlapping with my Venn diagram more than perhaps they do when they're given challenges, which are basically, or can I speak in front of these people? Can I lead these people? Or can I get this job in television? Or can I get that job in teaching? Or can I build something that's more than me? But I think coming back to theatre, when we know that AI is going to change everything, is a really important step for me. I always feel very at home on stage. And I love the stories that theatre is preoccupied with, often more satisfying than even long-form television. It also can be a harder watch and harder to get anything from. You can become more bored and more painfully located in a theatre than anywhere else in the world sometimes. But other times it's transporting and transformational and can be transcendental. So I hold it in high esteem and hope to reach its potential every time I'm involved in it, either as an audience member or as a performer. And those of us who can do that and are engaged in that axiom, I think will be strengthened as things become more artificial. There's not to say that we won't have a place in the artificial world, and I think we should develop that. And I am trying to learn certain skills and become like imaginative and, sort of, what's the word, non-judgmental, I suppose, unprejudiced against that development, as much as it is going to impede and impose upon our community and our incomes and our stability. I'm trying to remain open-minded. I also think I need to strengthen the core of my identity as a live performer, and allow that to emanate for those who need it. And I want this to be something that I become even better at doing over the years to come, even though my body is going to change and aging is going to slow down the synapses in my brain at learning lines, etc. I can't think of a better discipline to involve myself in as I age. And as alongside all of that, what I do in my private life, in my personal life, to keep myself primed for that is also so important. I've really taken that on more in the last 5 years than I did in my 20s and 30s. Training for me, obviously at drama school and even at university, there were disciplines there which I was happy to throw myself into. And some, me more than some, I was far more serious and worthy about it than some of my classmates. But, I was still distracted. I was still under self-sabotaging all over the place. But as I near 50, I've got a far better sense of where I do that and why I do that, and I mitigate it. And I would want that to be what a young actor is able to realize of themselves before they get to my age, before they self-sabotage, as well as anyone who else is in a different business. I speak to people who now public speak and who sort of present and, have got some sort of new leadership role, and I speak to them about where they self-sabotage and their approach to speaking publicly, using their voice, seeing themselves under the scrutiny of others with that outside eye, and how they undermine themselves and where that stems from. And I'm no psychologist, I'm no therapist, but I've gone through a lot of therapy myself, and I know where there can be touch points for me that trigger my reaction to something in a negative way. When in stress, when in pressure, when under scrutiny, when in high emotion, all of which I need to be able to harness, exploit, and lean into in any performance, but also on a day-to-day basis when I'm with people, when I'm trying to get work, when I'm trying to survive. So, learning or leaning into the practices that enable one to do this well and to do this well and to deepen I think is a great way to spend one's life. The side effects, the byproducts of trying to do this by way of a high point of performance, like a play, a production, a performance one night, by aiming towards the hypothesis of that, or the actuality of that, as I am this week, is really has great side benefits as one grows older and feels more responsible for certain things and less responsible for others. I'm more responsible now because I'm a father. I'm more responsible now because I'm a breadwinner for others. I'm more responsible now because I'm a more senior member of society, and I have to have a certain role in that, in contributing, but also guiding and protecting. But then I also have less responsibility because I am going to be less relevant, I suppose. There's going to be a change in where I have any real voice. That's already been apparent as we grow older. But I feel there are good practices that I can maintain that can be shared for those who also need to look out for those qualities. And I haven't, and I think that's come to the fore over recent years for me. Besides just trying to get a job, trying to be seen in this production, try to, sort of be well known enough to be considered viable in this production, in this part with these people. They're all markers which have some benefit, but they also can have a deficit and also have a relevance. They're very transient. But as we grow older and our bodies become more frail or more vulnerable, I treat acting really as a way to keep myself fresh and alive and focused and young. And this sometimes seems inappropriate. Sometimes you're with people who are all about sort of being grown up and sort of big and powerful and responsible and serious and sort of full of, I don't know, qualities that make them feel very adult or senior. And that's all well and good. But then there's also a great side of life, which is playful and youthful and imaginative and silly and vulnerable and open and artistic. And there's no reason why anyone at any age shouldn't have those qualities. And I find that maintains a flexibility of my identity, within my identity, a flexibility within my mind, my approach and my perception of things. And it also maintains a physical flexibility, an imaginational one. And I feel like I can relate to younger people sometimes based on that flexibility more readily than my father could relate to young people, to myself, for instance. So, there are virtues in even the simple practices towards being an actor. And one of those currently is, yes, working yourself up to a stage where you can take a stage and tell a story. And for me, that's a very privileged facility to have. One works hard for it. The last 4 weeks have been very hard work. And the last 25 years, 30 years of training and getting to a place where this is even viable has also been hard work. People don't see how the maintenance of a career in acting, with all its ups and downs and with all its blanks, pluses and minuses, is hard work to survive that, to keep going, to keep developing, to keep positive to such an extent or for such a length of time that you can be 50 and given a part that a 50-year-old has to play, but needs an enormous amount of energy, vocal ability, physical ability, and experience to be able to make it work. And, there's no guarantee I can still. There's still that question that I'm throwing myself out to be judged over. And all of that takes the sort of resilience of experience. And you can't just walk into that off the street at 50 and think, yeah, well, I mean, how hard can it be? Let me just, it's low status work. It's a few £100 a month, a week. It's a small theatre, group of people that most people will never hear of again. It's how high pressure can this be? How much of a challenge can this be? This is pretty straightforward. Why isn't this available to me? Or I could do this, no problem. It's not given much value, but it requires a lot of life experience, a lot of professional experience. And that's not to toot my horn or anyone else's horn. Henry Goodman is playing an 89-year-old man in this play who was born in the 1800s, and the play is set in 1968. He tells brief stories of his life across Europe into America as a Russian Jew. And that's part of the wonder of the character. I think of how many men could play that part, or women, whatever the comparative role might be. But how many people could play an 89-year-old in a naturalistic piece and pull it off and be viable, be believable in that role and still do it? Henry's not 89, he's in his 70s, but which obviously is an asset, slightly younger, but he has to be able to portray that age, that wisdom, that experience, the vocal and the physical dexterity and demand of that performance at an age that is close enough, but not impeding his likelihood of achieving it. And there aren't many actors who can do that feat now, and it might be Hecuba, or it might be The Tempest, what's his face, Prospero, played by a woman in her 70s, or Queen Elizabeth, whatever. It doesn't matter the gender, it doesn't matter the play. I'm just saying that there are people who get onto stage who do that kind of thing for peanuts, who've had a life's worth of work behind them to be able to do it for us. And that's extraordinary. Unfortunately, it's undervalued in as much that you can't survive on the money that they pay you to do that. And for someone like Henry to do it at this stage of life, he has to have money in the bank, or I have to have money in the bank already to allow me to do it. I heard Miller talk in an interview, recorded interview with Charlie Rose, in an old interview before he was cancelled and before Miller died, about how actors are keeping theatre open. And he's talking about, I think it was in the 90s. So he's talking about New York Broadway theatre back then. And actually, he cites a production of The Price that he's doing that's being staged on Broadway at that time. It's obviously not the most recent one that has Mark Ruffalo and Danny DeVito in it and Tony Shalhoub. It's one decades before then, but not the original production that Miller himself directed in 1968. And he says that those actors get paid $700 a week. And they are subsidizing the theatre by taking that cut, because, of course, any one of them could go off and do a TV show, if they are able to get the parts, that would pay them 10 times, 100 times that. Scores. I can't remember what the multiples would be, but 50x. And by taking such little money, they are enabling theatre to exist for certain people with money to invest and make money from that, obviously taking a risk. But they would make the risk would be far greater if the actors were taking a decent wage. So, and that was in the 90s, and he's talking about $700. We're in the second quarter of the 21st century, some 30 odd years later. And let me tell you, the money's no different. So, literally figures are no different. And, you know, that's not taking account of inflation and everything else that's gone on since then. So, you know, we are subsidizing the theatre even more with these opportunities that we are hungry for, but sometimes cannot take. And I had to really think hard about doing this job. I had to speak to my accountant about doing this piece of theatre, because sometimes you just cannot afford to make that investment in yourself, or again in the theatre, because you haven't got the backup. You don't have either somebody paying away, or you don't have savings to help you along the way. You haven't earned enough in different media to be able to, or a different job even, to be able to take this holiday in the theatre. So I hope that in time, as we recognize the value of acoustic, analog, organic actors, as they become more and more significant or contrasted to where the industry is going, that we pay more for them. We see the value of those who can do that work and do it well. And it becomes, yes, maybe a rarefied, more exceptional thing, but they get paid more exceptional rates. It's not going to happen. No one thinks of it that way. By way of keeping us alive, we have to be, as I say, we have to be the ones that make a sacrifice towards being part of it, keeping that medium alive. But it will be more important to be kept alive as yet more alternative means of communicating become dominant. So it would be a challenge for me to think, if I'm going to be a theatre actor who's articulating his expression even more down this road again, and I used to do a lot more theatre than I have done since I've become a father, then I need to be able to subsidize that in an independent way, whilst also recorded media becomes more competitive and less remunerative and more replaced by artificial rendering. There was a while, for about 10 or 12, 15 years, I can't really put a number on it, where I was able to earn money on screen that enabled me to do plays every so often and bring up a family in a healthy like a privileged middle class, but like I'm middle class, nothing too more aspirational than that way in London. But as you know, Hollywood shrinks and other investments shrink and other media comes over, then that's just harder and harder and harder. So where actually should we be? I think we should be on stage, and we should be developing other means of communication and business models that work completely to us exclusively. I think we're in an age where people set up businesses by themselves, and you know, sooner or later there's going to be the one person billionaire who's been working with AI to sell whatever they're selling, completely aided by agentic AI, and there'll be a billionaire because of that. There are several millionaires already, of course. Faster number of millionaires in these forthcoming years than there will have been at the boom of the internet. And where we as actors can put ourselves into that. You know, there are Naval, what's his face, from Silicon Valley, who's a bit of a guru when it comes to this kind of thing. One of his catchphrases about how there will be as many companies in the world potentially as there are people. And of course, that's not legislating for anyone who's got no interest or no need, or you know, has just got no intention of becoming a company unto themselves. But the point is that the facilities, the technologies exist for us to be able to express ourselves, make money, reach out, create communities, communicate, sell products of some kind, whatever kind, to a small group of people who are invested in that and make us viable as companies. And that's something that I've been thinking a lot about, because I see it to be perhaps one of the main ways to go as a creative person within a shrinking industry. That my first tenet would be my ability to perform on stage, communicate freely, authentically with you here now, or in a black box on a set with costume and character, or you like as me, on voice, embodied, intentional, released, and direct and vulnerable, without accoutrements in this fashion, so you or anyone like you gets to learn something about what I know a lot about. That's where I see life potentially going for me and others. I can bed down, burrow into how I treat Miller, Shakespeare, Williams, Pinter, or anyone new, Graham, Churchill, whomever, and how I communicate that soulful experience. Because the thing is, of course, as an actor, we use our imaginations and our souls. We share our unique experience and our emotional tapestry, the fabric of our lives, the loom of all of our joys and traumas and losses and wins, and all the people that we've learnt from and been affected by. We lay out that tapestry and we cut into it and we splice it with the character, so that you, the watcher, have a transportative or transformational experience. You have some lens given to you momentarily on your own experience that you wouldn't otherwise find the words or the physical ability, for physical manifestation of expressing. That's what actors are. And to go back to what I was saying right at the beginning of this, what is an actor is an important question to ask in these coming years. And what does it boil down to for you, me, or for anyone who started? And how can that function on a landscape where AI performers will slot into other jobs that we might have done previously? Entertainment, to make people laugh, to give them something to distract them, to escape into, to enjoy the jeopardy of, to enjoy the thrill of, the humor of, the sexiness of entertainment. Education. So we're shown a different world. We're shown a different time. We're given the history through the eyes of Shakespeare of of various kings of England, say, or the play I'm doing, The Price, at the moment. Like, okay, post-war America, civil rights era, with its foundations in the Wall Street crash and the industrial era and the explosions thereof. What it was like for those people then, and the sort of literary benefit of that, perhaps, as well. The use of words, imagery, all this is educational, right? And actors are sort of, accessible points of education. We're like teachers in a very non-hierarchical way. We're there to express, to represent information that you could otherwise read, but you are living with them, and it becomes more affecting and more perhaps powerful to learn about the Second World War, or to learn. That's an educational side of it. Then to edify, to become somehow a better person. And not because we're better people, but because the experience of undergoing a story to get together collectively in communion, and if it reaches into some emotional space within you, and turns that mulch over in a way that you are not prepared to do on your own terms and you're alone, but actually starts to sort of mix up some of those feelings that you have repressed or forgotten, or you ignore, or you that trigger you into behaving a certain way towards other people, keep you stuck, keep you focused on a pathway, that potentially we learn how to be better to each other and to ourselves through stories represented by actors, told by actors. So if that's what an actor is, and we do it with our bodies, our voices, our imaginations, our souls, then that can find its place in all sorts of arenas. And it doesn't have to just be, it can't get replaced by something digital. Even on screen, where it's going to become more and more realistic, there will be a version of us that will always be different to that, because we'll fuck around with ourselves until it is. They'll base everything they create in AI of acting and of films and movie making, etc., on everything that's gone before, and then go off in a really weird, fruity direction, as you can see easily now with various AI creators. And the more wacky and weird they get with that, the more wacky and weird we'll get at being simple, organic, acoustic, analog beasts of creativity. And I think that's an exciting, pull, that if you've got the facility of an actor to speak, to lift the story up for an audience already, then you are in good shape. And I hope that that's where we'll go. That's where we can go. But then that's also translatable, because every industry is going to get pushed and squeezed by AI, and authenticity, humanity, vulnerability, honesty, vitality, and I want another itty word that means communication, connectivity. They'll all be very, very important. Emotional intelligence. And like I've just spoken for an hour almost off the top of my head. I'm not saying that that's a great skill, because it's very indulgent on one level, but the point is I'm happy to do that on subjects that I feel very, passionate about and knowledgeable of. And if you're wondering how you get there, and if you'd like more of this yourself, but you're not sure how to achieve it, because of course it's not easy, there are lots of impeding sort of self-analyses. What's the word? There's a buzz phrase I've picked up off YouTube that is like a devaluing mindset of some kind. That's not it, but it's along those lines that stop you. Come in and say, no, you're a dick. You're indulgent. You're narcissistic. You don't have anything interesting to say. You're stupid. You're ugly. Your voice is crap. You sound like a horrible version of your own mum. Whatever that gets in the way, that can all be removed with not artifice, not ignorance, not obscuring or delusion, but release, connection to a true self, where you understand your limitations, you understand your traumas, you understand what it is that holds you back, the voice of negativity that steps in. You know where they come from, and you can remove that and put that to bed and say, it's okay, I'm looking after you. I'm going to leave you there because this isn't threatening you. There's no threat here. I'm in control. This is powerful. This is me. This is simple. And the voice that I'm going to use is entirely mine, and it doesn't feel threatened by anyone else. It doesn't have to defend itself. It is what it is. And a real physical connection then starts to happen. With your breathing apparatus, with your articulation apparatus, your embouchure, your articulators, and then with the mind, with the thought processes, the synapses that we're very good at using when we're talking about something with a mate over coffee. We can be very good at using in the context of scrutiny, of expectation, but generally get shut down because of. But not if you're an actor, not if you've had experience, if you've had a process of stripping away and then seeing what you have in that rattle bag of you-ness and laying them all out, dusting them off, and using that as your criteria by which you communicate, by which you connect, by which you educate, entertain, and edify. And having that kernel of existence, of purpose, is a hugely resilient making thing without it actually being resilient. Resilience sounds calcified sometimes, and tenacious and persistent and enduring, and they're sort of stuff that I needed to swim the channel. The true resilience is the flexible tree with its roots embedded in earth that gives it sustenance and support. And that's where my own sense of resilience and confidence and ability and purpose come from. And I've refound some of that again just through another step in my life, another chapter by doing this play. I was aware of all this stuff. I could have said all this as well prior to rehearsing the play, but it's, now recontextualized by taking on a piece of drama which has educated, entertained, and edified me already. Because Miller is a great lens. He is a great creative mind through which to do that too. He had it in spades, obviously, and so we can all look at his plays as the vehicles, the conduits of that kind of transformation. That's what he was doing. And as an actor, that's what I do. That's what you do. That's what you, as a business owner, as a leader, as a public speaker, as a coach, could be doing more of if you allow yourself to. And there are things I could help. I could show you how to do that. But it's not important right now. I've got to get going to rehearsal. I've got to go in and do a line run, and also get into costume then, and then get into tech. It's going to be a bumpy road for a couple of days, but we'll get there. And then we're performing in front of an audience on Thursday. Holy shit! But that's all good. It's good to be on here again. But and thank you, Rich, Emily, and Gavin, my 3-person audience for now. I hope you're all well, and sending everyone love and thanks. I'm the resilient artist, and so are you.